Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar. Whilst we wait for anyone that's just joining, could I do my usual check, please? So could somebody tell me if you can see my shared screen, if you can see me, and if you can hear me, please? Brilliant. Thank you very much. Right, so I'll just wait a moment for anyone still joining, then we'll get going. Whilst we're waiting, I'm going to paste a link into the chat, which is the resource for today. Okay, that's probably long enough. So hello, welcome to the webinar. I think I've got a little group of regulars by this point, so I think most of you know who I am. But for those that aren't regular attendees, my name is Sam. I'm the Academy Manager here at Infigo. So I'm responsible for a lot of the onboarding training and any of the tutorials that you might have watched. I'm also going to be joined today by Duncan, who will be manning the chat once again. So if you do have any questions as we're going through the webinar, somewhere on your live Storm screen, there will be a chat window. And you'll be able to ask questions and Duncan will jump on those. This webinar will be a maximum of 1 hour in duration. The topic is going to be a look back at the major developments of 2024. So basically what I've done for this is I've gone through all of our What's New articles, which came out over the course of the year, had a look as well if there's anything that I missed. And I've picked out a selection of the developments, some of which are nice to show, some of which are nice for you guys to know about. It doesn't mean it's a complete list at all, because we've only got an hour after all. But it should give you a good indication of the sort of stuff we've done. You might find some new functionality that you can incorporate into your own storefronts. If you do want to look at any of these What's New articles again to see anything else that's come out in addition to what I talk about, I just pasted the link for this page, which is a useful resource, into the chat. And in the introduction section, there's a button there for Learn More, where you can get straight to those What's New articles that have come out over the past 11 or 12 months. Okay, so without further ado, let's get started. So on here, you can see the major topics I'm going to be breaking it down into. And again, it's just a selection of the stuff that we've done. So I'll briefly talk about some of the changes we've made to some of the Connect integrations, to the MIS integrations. I'll try and keep those quite brief, as I know they're probably applicable to less people, but they'll let you know what we've brought out. I'll then talk about a couple of major updates we made to Invent, which a larger subset of customers use, so I'll go through those in a little bit more detail. Then a lot of usability and UI enhancements, so just little features, little things we've incorporated to make your life a bit easier and expanding your capability within the platform itself. I then want to point out just some of the performance and efficiency enhancements that we've been working on. Nothing to show you particularly there, just a list of nice to know things to show that we are trying to work on performance in the background, just to keep you, to improve your experience with the system. A couple of things to do with security and access management. So this is things such as our improved SSO functionality or improved ability to allow you to set up SSO. And then I want to talk about some of the documentation we've got as well, because we've got an expansive lot of documentation that we can show you. Okay, so starting off with Print IQ. So our integration with Print IQ and a couple of things that we've brought out for that particular integration. Now, way back in January of 2024, we brought out the custom quoting capability. Now, Print IQ custom quoting allows you to retrieve fully specified quotes from Print IQ without having to create multiple SKUs for each product variation. So instead, you would map Infigo products to PrintIQ equivalents and then override specific parts of the base product specification for more complex quotes. So that's a very brief overview. So up until this point, until this was released, in order to create an estimate and then retrieve live pricing from PrintIQ, it required you to create an individual SKU for each combination of product that you wanted to offer to your customer. So for example, if you had 5 fixed sizes of a product and then combined that with 2 stocks and 2 different finishes, that meant you would have to create 20 SKUs within PrintIQ. Still more than feasible to do this, still very, very possible. But this new functionality removes the need to create these products up front and instead allows you to build up a detailed mapping between your Infigo products and its PrintIQ equivalent using various different component parts of that product. So I won't spend too much time on this. We've got a lot of little topics to go through, so I'll keep an eye on the time. But just to demonstrate this on one of our demonstration storefronts for PrintIQ, in terms of what the customer would see, it's not too much different. They would still see the usual Infigo storefront methodology with the different attribute selections and then the ability to request a price, where it would take a second because it's actually sending that information to PrintIQ, getting the required data back, and then presenting it to the user. However, this is now using that custom quoting. So this is a fairly standard scenario where you're choosing from set attributes. But what if, for example, we go for custom here and start putting some really obscure values in there? Now, that wouldn't really be feasible using the SKU methodology unless they were fairly standard methods. However, using the custom methodology, because it's connecting just certain parts of those specifications, it means we can actually utilize this. So we get a price there. Now, showing very quickly the way this is actually specified, I've just gone into my PrintIQ Connect settings here. And all we're doing, or not, sorry, wrong one. If I go into that product, go to my Connect link for that. Whoever has one of our Connect modules, we're very familiar with this Connect link button at this point. And what you'll see on here, instead of just having the ability to link one SKU, we now have the ability to link different parts of its specification. Now, a lot of this terminology might be unfamiliar to the pure Infigo user because this is all terminology that's been brought through from PrintIQ and specifications that you've got set up in PrintIQ. But what this means is that you can create a base specification on the top level, and then if you start digging down into different attributes and attribute combinations, you just override parts of that specification. So if I go in and look at an attribute, for example, if I go to size, in which we've got a couple of set specifications, Connect link, and you'll see there that a lot of my, or hopefully you will, hopefully it's not too small. You'll see there that a lot of my specification is inherited from the level above, but that finished size specification has been overridden. So hopefully that makes sense. There's loads more tutorial resources available on that website, or webpage I've given you. The other PrintIQ update, which came in November, was to do with shipping cost synchronization from PrintIQ. So this, again, is fairly easy to specify. The legwork is all done in PrintIQ here, making sure that all your shipping calculations are correct. We're just using that information. We're sending the contents of the basket as it is over to PrintIQ. And then as part of the checkout process, we can get back what that is going to cost and then display it using the different shipping methods. So within the actual PrintIQ settings, we can specify this delivery mapping table. And all this is a key and a value. One of them is your Infigo delivery method. One of them is your PrintIQ delivery method, and it's just linking those two together. Within PrintIQ, so this is our sample PrintIQ environment, you're just looking for the delivery type name and connecting those two together. You activate a couple of settings within your PrintIQ, connect PrintIQ settings, and then that information should start free flowing. And again, we have content on that available should you wish to learn more. For the customer side of things, it still just appears in that general checkout flow. It might just take a few seconds more to calculate what the shipping is going to be because it has to send it and retrieve it to and from PrintIQ. Okay, one of the other MIS or Connect plugins that we looked at or we introduced over 2024 was Connect SERM. Now you're going to have to forgive me here. I've got a lot of different tabs on the go for this, so I'm going to have to do some switching. There. Okay, so this is again one of our demonstration sites, and this time it's for SERM. So Connect SERM, our integration, is a powerful plugin that seamlessly connects Infigo's web-to-print platform with SERM's MIS solution. And that's specifically tailored for the labeling and packaging sector. So we bridge the gap between these two systems, and using this methodology, users benefit from live pricing, which is linked directly to SERM estimates. And that's a SERM terminology. They're slightly different from Infigo's, obviously. The ability to reorder based on past specifications and the automatic synchronization of customer data. So basically, if a customer is created within SERM itself, it can automatically create customer within Infigo as well, and vice versa, I believe. Okay, so looking at our sample site here. Now, again, from the end user perspective, it's going to look very much just like a regular Infigo storefront. There's just going to be a few different areas which the general Infigo user might not be too familiar with. So for example, if I go to my account section here, we have estimates, products, and orders. And this is information which has been brought in from Connect SERM. So your estimates is just that. It's specifications that have been made on a particular product. So let's say you've chosen a particular combination of attributes. It will send that information over to SERM, and it will retrieve the required information to give a live price. And then it creates an estimate to do that, and then it will save that in the estimates page. You also have products. So that allows a SERM user to actually, or an Infigo user with SERM on the back end, to actually reorder specifications which have already been made, but provide a different artwork. So let's say, for example, that they want some stickers, or something like that, or a lot of labels, exactly the same size, exactly the same specifications in terms of stock and finish, but they want to upload a different artwork. They'd come into the products section here, where they could just select a previous specification and provide a different artwork for a much simpler process. And there's orders where they can see their current orders. But in essence, it's very similar to a lot of our other MIS offerings in terms of it lets you retrieve pricing, it lets you push information into an MIS and that kind of thing. But it's got the slight variations based on what SERM is able to do. And we've got loads of tutorials available if you're more interested in that. Right. So I don't have anything specifically to show for this one, but I want to talk about something we made in September, or released in September, which was Connect Switch. And don't worry, we're nearing the end of the MIS section now. So our Connect Switch integration works with Focus Switch, and it's coupled with the Infigo Connect app, which is available on the Infocus Switch App Store. And this app automates the workflow by importing job details, asset files, and metadata from your Infigo orders into the Infocus Switch environment, where then it can be pushed out into various other platforms, formats, and whatever. Additionally to this, it supports the ability of status updates back into Infigo. So as it's working through some workflow, which might be something similar to what we've got on the screen there, as a very basic example, it might get to a point where information's been fed into Infigo Switch, some processes have happened, and then a status update has happened, which you then want to push back into Infigo because you might want to automate the send out of email updates. You might want to give tracking links. You might want to just have it updating in their My Account area. So it's got that two-way communication within that particular app. So there's a couple of different modes that this can utilize. So it's got polling mode. So this is where Infigo Connect automatically scans your storefront at regular intervals, ensuring that any new jobs are integrated into your workflow without you having to do anything manually. You've got the ability to set a preferred polling frequency and then let the automation take care of the rest, really. And then you've got sort of real-time job handling as well. So if polling is not what you want to go for, we do have the ability to utilize webhooks. So this is where Infigo Connect imports jobs instantly as they become available, enabling you to stay ahead of the game, let's say, ahead of the game, and then actually go and process your orders faster. So it's whichever is of greater benefit to yourselves and your workflow. And then the final thing to mention in the MIS section, well, it's not MIS, the Connect section, is the ability to actually integrate Canva designs into your Invent work via a third-party tool called Marksware Convert Marks. There's details on that on the page I've given you. So it's not a tool that we've developed or anything like that. It's a tool which is just available, which might allow you, if you do utilize Canva, to get those into InDesign for utilizing in Mega Edit. So it converts Canva PDFs into an Adobe InDesign format and allows you to create variable print templates from your Canva files for customization using your Infigo storefront. Okay. Check where I am again. Right, so next I'm going to talk about the couple of updates that we've seen in Invent. Now there's two major updates. There's been lots of little updates and things, but two major changes that have come in Invent are the ability to create barcodes and QR codes within Invent itself. That includes things like V-cards. And then a little later in the year, in May, we have introduced the ability for advanced grouping. Now that gives you the ability to actually fully control how different fields respond to each other. So you group them together, you specify what kind of spacing and positioning you want between the different fields. And then as you input into a text field so it grows, it will move the other ones. If you hide one of the fields, the other ones will move to fill the void, that kind of thing. So I'm here talking about it. Let me actually open up and show you. All right, so just to let you know, this example I've got here, which demonstrates both of it's very, very simple, but it demonstrates both of these bits of functionality. It is available for you to download both the packaged InDesign file and the MEX file from that page I've given you. So if you do need some guidance when you're trying to do this on how exactly they were set up, there is videos that will show you, but if you want specific guidance that you can download and play with yourselves, you can get hold of this file. Right, so let's start with the barcodes and QR codes. So obviously this isn't an invent. This has now been transferred over to MegaEdit in a very simplified, simple form in this case. What we've got over on the right-hand side, zoom in, is a few text boxes. And in terms of the barcode and the QR code, we've got it so that the information that's input into here is automatically updating the contents of that barcode and QR code. So if I start typing in, you'll see that my barcode or QR code is actually changing as we're doing this. So this is set up as various QR code, V card fields. So things like the name, the job title, the email address. So what it means is that when somebody comes over and scans that QR code, that will automatically be populated into their phone. It doesn't have to be a V card. It can be just a QR code containing generic information in whatever form you want. But that's a good practical example for it. Now, the way in which this is set up, and I do have to go to InDesign for this, which doesn't zoom quite as well. So my apologies if it's a bit small. So I've just got an empty frame here on my InDesign file. In my properties, classically, all you would have in here is to say whether that frame is active or inactive, or enabled or disabled, which was just to control it as an image field, essentially. What we've got now is the ability to select between static, image, or barcode. So static is where you're not considering it as dynamic on your Infigo template. We've got image, which is going to allow you to populate clip arts, image, uploaded images, and that kind of thing, or barcode, which we're using here. If you select barcode, you get the ability to select various different barcode or QR code types. And then based on that selection, you can input different information into that. And the information that you link in there can be static if you want it to. So if you want some static information, you can include that. Or you can link it to a variable that you've specified somewhere else in your template. So in this case, I've created a few variables for text fields. I'm linking those text fields directly into my available fields within the barcode. Now, it's worth noting that you won't be able to see this in action within InDesign itself. In order to actually see if it's working, you need to actually take it into MegaEdit and have a look in there. Okay, the next thing we were talking about was, zoom in slightly, was this positioning of fields, this advanced grouping. Now I'm going to enable a slight debug mode here, just so we can actually keep an eye on the fields. So what I've done there is just highlighted the actual fields themselves, so you can see how they're all moving in relation to one another. If you do want to utilize that, I think that functionality is available to everyone. It's just Control, Shift, and D. You should be able to get to that. And if it is just admins, I apologize, but you should be able to get to that. Right. So first off, let me show you the behavior that this does. So what you'll see is that things move both horizontally and vertically as we set these up, and it will maintain spacing as we specify it. Let me just fill all these in. Okay, so let's base this on the scenario that's required for this particular product. So what we've said is that text 1, 2, and 3, which is these vertically stacked ones here, should always align to the top of the barcode with a constant gap between the fields. So that's all good. So for example, if we remove text 1, which is already aligned to the top, text 2 should now jump up and align to the top instead. If I get rid of text 2, I can't because the image is there, but text 3 should jump up instead. This is more my setup of the basic example rather than the functionality itself. What this next example should do, so text A, B, and C should always be horizontally centered with a constant gap between those fields. So again, that should mean if I get rid of one of these, so let's say I get rid of text B, the other two will move in. So the gaps will still be the same between the two fields that remain, but they're now centered. So you see, we did have kind of this functionality before, but this is way more advanced in the sort of what you can do to control it. And it also applies to the size of fields as well. So I've got this one here where I've got a subgroup where text2 is an adjustable size field based on the text that's in it. And I've got it so this image here will move horizontally based on the content within text2. So if I start adding more text, you can see that the image is starting to automatically shift along. It will get to a point where it's reached the size of my boundary box where it will start just splitting it out, but you can see the kind of behavior that we're going for here. Okay, and in terms of how those are set up, and I appreciate that's a fairly basic example, but hopefully it gives you a flavor. So this utilizes the concept of groups inside of Invent and InDesign. So we used groups for the previous stuff that's still there as well, but when we actually group things together here and enable them, you'll see that we now have access to, on these advanced options here, we've got the ability to say adjust vertically, adjust horizontally, vertically and horizontally, or no adjustment. And then underneath, for each of the fields in that group that you've enabled, you've got the ability to specify what the gap on the left margin is, or the gap on the right margin is, or the top and the bottom if you specified vertically, and then also what the size of the field itself is as well. So if I go to advanced settings here, and again, I apologize if it's a little bit small, you'll see that we can specify either a static value as to what those elements are, so the margins or the size, or we can make it automatic, where it will actually calculate how much space it has left based on the available variable space, and then it will shift as appropriate. Now, I do want to keep it fairly brief at this stage because there's a lot to go through. But this is a very, very useful tool, which I think a lot of people would benefit from if you're not using already. There are tutorials on this, again, on that page I provided if you want some more information. Or if you've got any immediate questions, Duncan is on hand to try and answer those for you. Right, so now I want to fire through some of the usability and user interface and user experience enhancements. So these are just small things that we've implemented just to make your life a bit easier over the course of the year. So right, so the first thing is module duplication. So content templates have been around a couple of years now. I think they were introduced about the time I joined Infigo, to be honest. But initially, you had to do things very, very manually. So if you wanted to recreate a bit you've already designed somewhere else, you would either have to do it manually or you'd have to go and create a custom template, which is a fantastic piece of functionality, but not everyone might want to use that. So we've introduced two bits of functionality, one which is a simple duplicate of a certain part of your content template in the same page, and then another which is allowing you to actually save sets. So you can save a piece of the content template that you've made and use it elsewhere on your site if you want to. And I'll quickly demonstrate those. So I'm on my homepage here, for example. This is another bit of functionality I'll get onto in a moment, in case you haven't seen this. I'm going to jump straight to my editable content for my homepage banner. Now you'll see that we have our slider and then some different columns underneath. which are represented here. And what I'm going to do in this example is just duplicate my slider. Just with the duplicate button here, that will just create a carbon copy of that part of the content template. And it also applies to areas inside the template as well, not just the top level. So you could duplicate entire slides, you could duplicate paragraphs that you've created, images that you've created, anything that's in there, you'd be able to duplicate just that particular part. And then of course, what that means is that when we reload the page, we now have a carbon copy of that slider. And if I'd cleared my cache, which I haven't, we would see both of those sliders on top of one another. The other thing I wanted to show was these saved sets, which aren't immediately super clear how to use, but I hope a lot of you have seen this already because it's very, very useful. So what this allows you to do using this save set icon here is to save, again, it applies to either a top level part of your template, or you can do it to subparts, separate images, separate columns, whatever you've formatted already, and save it to a database. So let's say, for example, I take my slider, saved set, and I'll call it saved slider template. And then I'll do the same with something that's inside one of those. So let's say I've got my 4 columns. Maybe I'll save the image as well. Now you'll be able to reuse those sets anywhere where that particular element that you've saved is available. So for example, anywhere that we can place an entire slider, you should be able to load that entire set. Or anywhere where you can place an image, maybe within a column, we'll see in a moment, you should be able to reuse that image. You won't be able to just place them anywhere. It's got to be within the same structure within that content template. So if I go to content pages, for example, I'll make a new content page and show this. Content template editor, builder. Right. So now what I should be able to do is to load sets. And then you'll see that whatever is relevant to that particular location I'm trying to load it, I should be able to use it. So I could use my save slider template. It will load that in with all of its content included. So it saves the content as well. And you'll see that I have this load set ability within these different nested areas as well. So if I want to put it in here, so I'll say 1 column. If I put it in multi-column, I'll be able to load in that image I saved, for example. You do have the ability to manage those content sets as well. So wherever you can see those, you can go to manage sets. That gives you the ability to see details on them and delete any that you don't want to utilize anymore. Now, at the moment, these are just on one storefront. So that if you create them on one storefront, it will be available on the same storefront, I believe, unless Duncan has any updates on that information. I don't think it can be utilized cross storefront at the moment. Okay. Right, keep an eye on the time. I'm taking longer than I thought I was going to here. So we've got automatic categories in the header. So this is a super quick and simple one. One grievance that I always had, so I'm glad this was updated, is when you're creating a storefront, you would have to manually update these categories. And let's say you updated the categories list, you would then have to manually update the header and that kind of thing. But what we've introduced is the ability to automatically populate the categories that show in a portion of the header based on what we've also specified as a featured category. So most of you will know what these featured categories are. So if we go to category details, And then you've got the ability here to show on homepage. That makes it a featured category. And if you, whatever category you specify here, that will also be included in this automatically populated list, which appears in the header. To actually add that option to the header, we just need to go to our header content template, or our header editable content, sorry. I know I'm being fairly fast here, but I think most of you are familiar with this, this process of functionality. And then just go to add content, and you'll see that you have the ability there to do header item automatic categories. Now, this does just apply to categories at the moment. It's not just to it's not to products. It's not to featured products, just to categories. Okay, also within content templates, you have the ability to publish or unpublish different parts of it. So if you've spent a lot of time creating some really nice content, but you don't need it for the time being. So let's say you've got a section which is going to go on your homepage, which is to advertise Christmas, but you don't need it yet. You've got the ability to go on the settings icon. Nope, not that one. Go on the settings icon. Let's say our homepage banner. Settings icon on the slider, and you'll see you've got the ability to unpublish it. So you can make it so a certain part of your content template isn't shown, but you don't have to delete it. So a little bit more usability for you. Okay, something else I was showing was content management quick access. This, hopefully you all know about this now, but just in case anybody doesn't, this ties in the front and back end of your storefronts, allowing you to go straight from a front end page to the relevant place in the back end, saving you loads of navigation time. Anyone who's familiar with the process before we had this, it was a bit of a laborious process to identify exactly where you need to go in the back end, sometimes to update the relevant information. So what this does, I've got two sliders on the page now, which is confusing. If I go on this icon here, whilst logged in as an administrator, so our end users obviously won't see this, it gives us our content overlay. That gives us the ability to either directly edit certain parts of that page. So if I'm on my homepage, for example, it's giving me direct access to things like the header, the footer, the homepage banner, and that kind of things. Or I can go on this content overlay. And what that does, again, as the administrator, is highlights the different areas of our page. So you can see here, I've got the banner, and I can go directly to edit, or the header, and then directly to edit. And it will take me straight to that particular page so I can make my modifications. This also applies to things like product pages, product landing pages. So if I go and click on a product, go to my content overlay, I can get straight to the modification page of that product landing page. So I can jump straight to it and make the changes I need to make. Okay, very, very quickly, I'm sure most of you will have noticed that we've launched the notification center. So this is just to let us keep you updated with things that are going on. So you'll see things from me to do with the Academy. You'll see important service updates, days in the year when the office is closed, that kind of things will all be shown in here. It should give you a nice little notification when you have a message waiting. And there's always stuff from us. We've introduced something called Stock Management Reset. This was way back in March. So stock management, the concept of that has been around for quite some time, so a couple of years. It's part of access permissions. Stock management allows you to assign that somebody can only purchase a certain amount of a product, and then they won't be able to purchase any more. What this implementation of a reset allows you to do, which if you're on stock management, you'll see in resets and reset date, is allowing to reset when that limit will be applied. So for example, if someone's allowed to purchase 5 of this item per month, then you want it to reset every month. And that's what this functionality allows you to do. Okay, we have the enhanced multi-part editor, which was introduced in June. So this will now be on by default on all of your newly created Infigo storefronts. If you want to modify, if you're using an older storefront and want to turn this on, or if you've got this turned on and you want to turn it off and use the old one, then you can do so within the Infigo settings. There's information on the tutorial if you need to do that. But basically what this allows you to do, if I can find the right product, is to have a much more user-friendly multi-part product experience. So multi-part product is capable of a lot of different things, but its most general use case is just for allowing your customers to upload a PDF. And you want that to be a user-friendly experience. So what we've got here, you'll see I went through the product landing page as normal, where we select our different attributes, and we would have pricing if I'd specified any. But then when we start, the actual upload editor has changed slightly just to make it more user-friendly. You have the ability to do things like include an example download file. So if you want to provide them a die line, so they're giving you a correct formatted file. If you want to include some written or image-based upload requirements, you can put those on there as well. And it will show you things like the attributes that the customer has selected. So it's just a bit more of a user-friendly environment. The functionality in the background is still the same. The multi-part product still has a large configurable section, which is a lot of manual configuration, which allows you to do loads and loads of different things. But in terms of the core setup for allowing the upload of files, this should now be active on any new storefront that you create. Or, as I mentioned, if you want to turn it on an older storefront, Infigo settings, and then it's fairly obscure, I think, but if you search for multi-part, there's use new multi-part editor UI. All you need to do is turn that on. Right, I'm getting short on time. Checkout requirements. So this allows you to put some requirements on when a customer is actually allowed to check out. So there's a few different things you could specify. It could be an order total, an order subtotal. It could be a certain quantity of items and that kind of thing. But if you've not got enough in here to meet those requirements, you'll see here that checkout is invalidated. So for example, here I've got a rule on which says that the quantity purchased, the total quantity of the order has to be greater than 10. So because I'm less than 10, I get a message and I should not be allowed to check out. Now that is set up in its own area of Infigo. So if I go to checkout settings, checkout requirements, then you'll see all the different types of thing that we can configure to allow or deny checkout. So certain product tags, order subtotals, order quantity is what I've utilized here. And various other bits and pieces that you can play around with. And again, there's tutorials available on this. Right, we have rapid fire here. So we have improved quick add to cart options. So this, I think this began to be introduced probably in 2023, but there's slow improvements been made to it. So we've introduced several separate enhancements to this fairly simple ability really to add items to your cart or basket without having to actually go onto the product page itself. So there's a few new features available. I'm going to go to one of my categories to demonstrate this. So you can see I've got a few products in my category here, and I've got it configured, and showing you how to configure this is in the tutorials on that page again. If I hover over them, I have the ability to go to the product landing page. If it is a product where you need to go to the landing page, like if it's a mega edit product or a multi-part upload product, then you don't have any other options. However, if it's something like a stock product or a static PDF, you have got the ability to both enter a quantity on this little teaser page itself and then add that straight to basket. You can also configure it so that you can multi-select the products as well. You can specify how much of those products you want to add to basket and then add them to basket all at once. You've also got the ability to select what happens when you add something to basket in this way. So what you'll have seen there is when I clicked add to basket, I got a message at the bottom of the screen saying it was successfully added to our basket. You've also got the ability to either directly go to the basket page or the cart page, or directly proceed to the checkout. So all of these different bits of functionality are in a few different places within the settings because there are a few different features that you can pick and choose between, but together they make quite a powerful experience if they're used to their full extent. Okay, we have batch operations in shared print operations. So if I go to my shared print operations, quite a simple one this, but quite useful. I have the ability to now multi-select different jobs that have taken place or that have been brought into here. And that allows you to do a few things using this action list up here. So what you have available in the list will depend on the type of products or jobs that you've selected, but it allows you to do things such as recreate the outputs that were generated. If you need to, you can re-trigger connect plugins, and you can do this, as we've seen, for multiple jobs simultaneously, just to make it a bit easier for you to use. You've also got the ability that you can see there to download a combined job ticket of all those jobs, just to get a single document from all of those. Okay, we have the unified storefront management interface and enhanced navigation. Again, a very, very quick one to show. This should hopefully be quite useful to quite a few people. So there's two different places where you can normally get to your list of storefronts. One is when you're logged in as a platform administrator, which would be, you see switch storefront at the top here, which I'm sure most of you are familiar with. And the other is, this is where it tests my, I think I have to be on a platform admin. I've happened to use a lot of different storefronts during the course of this webinar. There, so a page like this. Now, this is a really simple page, which should hopefully be quite useful to a lot of people. So it gives you the ability to search between all your storefronts. You can order the lists in different ways. You've got search settings available to find certain storefronts. And it's now identical between the two pages this is available. So the switch storefront, and then when you're creating a new storefront, the storefront management area down there. So just to make it a bit more user-friendly for you. Okay, and then finally for this section, which is taking longer than I expected, is quantity attributes. So I'm just going to actually show you how this works rather than how to set it up. It is in the tutorials, if you like to see that. These were introduced in November. And what it does is it makes it possible for customers to choose different versions. So let's say sizes, for example, of the same product, pick how many of each that they want, and then add them all to cart at once as a single bulk addition, essentially. So for example, we've got this screen here where instead of having in one item of clothing, you would have a size selector. So you'd select small, medium, or large. If you wanted both a small and a medium, you might have to go to the landing page twice and add it to your basket. Let's say you just want to mass add this to the basket. We could say, okay, well, we want 5 instances of small, we want 5 instances of medium, and 1 instance of large. Those will be £7 each in our case. and then we can add those to basket. And what that will do is it will now add all of those to our basket. So you'll see we've got 5 small, 5 medium, 5 large. Total quantity of that is 11, and it's calculated the total price based on all of those, even though we've got the different quantity selections. Now, what we've also introduced is a way of grouping those attributes together. So this will be super quick. It's just a way that if you are modifying the CSS, you can group those different attributes together so that you can actually make them look quite nice as a grouped thing. So I've got a group there which is combining those two attributes. I could play around with the CSS to make it look a bit nicer so they're all grouped together in a nice way. Ooh, okay, right. And then we have enhanced reward point management. So reward points isn't something that everybody will use, but it does give you the ability to, well, add reward points to your customers. So when they place an order, you can assign points to them manually. You can specify what the exchange rate is of those points, and then they can use those points against future orders. We've had reward points in there for a long time, but they've gone through certain enhancements. So, for example, if I go to an individual customer, go to the reward points tabs, if it's enabled, you can see here I've got additional information than I previously had. So I can see a running track of reward point addition and subtraction. I can see where reward points have been redeemed on certain orders. And I can audit how those reward points are working. So for example, I can see who's changed them. I can see who's added reward points, what they've changed, and that kind of thing. So if you are one of the few customers that utilizes reward points, it just enhances that functionality for you. Right, I may overrun by a few minutes here, and I apologize if I do. So the next section here is to do with performance and efficiency enhancements. So nothing specifically to show. This is mostly stuff that happens in the back end, hopefully without you noticing. But you'll see in here, I've got details on performance enhancements, which happen kind of month by month, which I've just extracted from the release notes that I get from the developers. And then I've summarized that into ones which were recurring performance enhancements at the top. So you can see there's a lot of work going on behind the scenes to sort of improve the process, to make the site faster to load, to cache certain things so that it doesn't have to be reloaded every time. Faster synchronization, background task optimization, and database calls. We're trying to make those faster all the time to make your experience better. That's all I'll say on it. But just so you know that we are working on that stuff in the background. Okay, and then the last couple of things are to do with security and access management. So one option here is the ability that we've added to have more control over passwords. So as a customer, or as an administrator rather, you have the ability to set someone's password as expired. So that means that when they next log in, they'll be prompted to change the password. So rather than having to forcibly reset the password for them, if you're normally having to do that in your workflow, you can just set it to expired and they can set their own. We've also implemented the ability for you to generate new passwords on the fly as well, if you want to do it that way, nice and fast. We've also added or updated our SAML and SSO functionality. So while we've had the ability to do single sign-on for a long time, it has very much been, you've got to do it alongside Infigo's support. So it needs some interaction with us to actually implement this. And that's obviously that takes time from your side and it takes time from our side as well. So what we've implemented here is the ability to largely implement the SSO on your own terms. So you can do things by yourself. We've also improved the configuration interface. Metadata accessibility has been improved. Security features have been enhanced somewhat. And so on and so on. So this is for very specific scenarios, of course, where you want to utilize SSO. There are guides available on how you might set this up using these new settings. But then actually how that works is like any single sign-on would. And I was going to show it, but I've got so many different storefronts open here. Okay, based on the interest of time, I'll leave that. But what you'll, it's a standard single sign-on functionality. So within the logging page of your Infigo storefront, as well as login, you would have the ability to log in with SSO. Customer would fill in the information, and it would take them to their Infigo storefront with their account populated and that kind of thing. And you've got the ability to, if the customer logs in and they don't have an account in Infigo, it will create the account within Infigo as well. Now, if anyone has any questions on SSO, please do get in touch with us. And as I mentioned, there's resources available on that page I sent out to show you how to set this up. Right. The final thing I want to show you here is just some additional documentation that we have available. So there's a small list there of updates that we've made to the Academy over the last year. So just general improvements. We're trying to continually make it easier to use and better to use. We're also gradually working on transferring the Help Center content from Zendesk over to the Academy portal as well, just so everything's all in one place. But this is a gradual process. Now, what I also wanted to point out was the fact that the developers have been working on some documentation as well, which I reference in the Academy, but they are hosted on separate pages. So the API documentation you may be familiar with. If you are utilizing the API, this is a great resource for you to know exactly what you need to connect to. That's been around for a little bit of time. But what we've definitely had done in the last year or so is these two here. So we've got this insights schema. So if you are using Infigo Insights, this will actually show you how the different data is split up, how things all link together and that kind of thing, allowing you to get much more clarity and visibility on what is available for you in Infigo Insights. If you aren't familiar with Infigo Insights, that is our reporting tool, which utilizes Metabase, allows you to get loads and loads of different metrics on your Infigo storefronts. And there's resources available on that. And then finally, the most recent one is MegaScript documentation. So if you are in the habit of creating or trying to create MegaScripts within your platform, so if you need to make some customized scripting, this has now been made easier for you with the implementation of some custom-made documentation. Now, a lot of this is probably beyond myself, but hopefully someone who's familiar with writing these scripts and has that coding expertise will be able to utilize this to their advantage. Okay, so that was just to make you aware of it, to be honest. And you can access those through the page I gave you or on the Infigo Academy. Right, and that is it for the content of this particular webinar. Apologies if it seemed a little bit rushed in the second half, but I've managed to just about squeeze everything in there, give you a rundown of all the major developments that we've made. But remember, it's not a complete list. So if you want to see additional stuff, have a look around on the Academy or click on the link to give you access to all of those individual What's New articles where you can see what exactly we've implemented with videos and written tutorials and all sorts of stuff. If you've got any remaining questions, please do ask away. We'll stick around for a little while. Otherwise, this recording will be available after the webinar on the Academy if you want to look at any part again. But thank you very, very much for your attention. I appreciate it. Yeah, and I'll see you next month for the next webinar.